So it looked like the government, the DOJ, is requesting a briefing from the head man in charge of the WNBA and the NBA.
The WNBA just made a move so controversial, so absolutely tone deaf, that it's got the entire basketball world questioning whether the league has completely lost its mind. Caitlin Clark, the player who single-handedly dragged women's basketball into the mainstream spotlight.
I'm just kind of ready for the next chapter and a new challenge in my life, but I think the reason I decided to announce it when I did was just to have that closure.
Just get slapped with a fine that's left fans, analysts, and even casual observers absolutely stunned. And here's the kicker. She didn't stay silent. Not this time. What she just exposed about Commissioner Kathy Englebert and the way this league operates behind closed doors is sending shockwaves that might act
very, very serious. The reason this is serious, not only just for the NBA, but for the WNBA as well. We know
reshape the entire future of the WNBA. This isn't just another fine. This is a reckoning. Let's rewind for a second because context matters here. Caitlin Clark isn't just some rookie who stumbled into relevance. She's the reason arenas that used to echo with emptiness are now packed to the rafters.
I think early on with the first couple injuries, I was like, oh, like I need to get back. I'm going to go to every road game no matter what, like whether I'm playing or not.
She's the reason networks fought tooth and nail for broadcasting rights. She's the reason your grandma, who's never watched a basketball game in her life, suddenly knows what a Logo 3 is. Clark brought legitimacy, money, and eyeballs to a league that desperately needed all three. So when that same league turns around and finds her for what most people see as a completely justified reaction, you can understand why the backlash is unlike anything we've seen.
The WNBA is also being pretty much ran for the most part by
before. The fine came down just hours ago, and social media has been absolutely on fire ever since. The league claims Clark violated conduct policies during a post-game interview where she spoke candidly about officiating inconsistencies and what she described as preferential treatment being given to certain players, while others, herself included, get hammered for the smallest infractions. She didn't curse. She didn't throw.
Our only hope at getting a new CBA deal done by the deadline, October 31st, or even getting an extension prepped and ready, was one Adam Silver. Adam Silver inserted himself and said he was going to make sure.
Tantrum. She didn't disrespect anyone personally. She simply told the truth as she saw it with the kind of passion that fans actually appreciate. But apparently, honesty doesn't sit well with the front office. What happened next is where things get truly explosive. Instead of quietly accepting the fine and moving on like most players would, Caitlin Clark
make sure to see to that a deal gets done. And now he's wrapped up in a whole bunch of other foolishness. Now he has to have a meeting with Congress by October 31st, the same deadline as the new CBA agreement.
Decided enough was enough. In a carefully worded but absolutely devastating statement released through her team, she didn't just address the fine itself. She went after the entire structure of how the WNBA handles discipline, how it protects certain narratives, and how Commissioner Englebert has consistently failed to create an environment where star players feel supported rather than targeted. And she didn't stop there. Clark brought receipts. She pointed out how other players have made far more.
We can kiss the 2026 season goodbye because this man was our only hope at getting a deal done. It is a wrap. No Caitlin Clark in 2020.
Inflammatory comments without facing any repercussions whatsoever. She highlighted instances where physical aggression that clearly crossed the line went unpunished, while she's been fined for verbal criticism that was, by any reasonable standard, tame. She even referenced the Wall Street Journal piece from months back that suggested her civil rights might have been violated due to the way she was being treated on the court, noting that the league's response to those allegations was essentially radio silence. The implication was...
This is very unfortunate news, honestly. I was hoping that Adam Silver would be able to come in and rectify some of the things and the missteps of Kathy Englebert, who we know was negligent in certain areas, but also
crystal clear. There's a double standard, and it's being enforced from the very top. Now here's where it gets even messier. This fine isn't happening in a vacuum. The WNBA is currently in the middle of some serious behind-the-scenes chaos that most casual fans don't even realize. There's a collective bargaining agreement that's supposed to be finalized by October 31st, a deadline that's rapidly approaching with zero indication that a deal is anywhere close. The Players Association has been pushing for better pay, better travel conditions, and more importantly, better leadership accountability. And guess who's been one of the most...
So it seems like he has better communication with the players, and they're willing to get something done with him and not Kathy. There's no movement on the CBA with Kathy. They don't even want to deal with this lady. They don't even want to talk to her. So there's no chance we'll actually get...
Vocal advocates for player rights throughout this entire negotiation process? You guessed it, Caitlin Clark. So when you view this fine through that lens, it starts to look less like standard disciplinary action and more like retaliation. It's starting to look like the league office is trying to make an example out of Clark, trying to send a message that even their biggest star isn't untouchable. But here's what they clearly didn't anticipate. Caitlin Clark has leverage that no other WNBA player has ever had. She has mainstream appeal. She has fans who will follow her wherever she goes. And most importantly, she has options. If the WNBA wants to play hardball with the one person keeping their product relevant, they might find out the hard way what happens when you bite the hand that feeds you. The timing of all this couldn't possibly be worse for Commissioner Englebert. She's already under massive scrutiny for her handling of multiple controversies this season. There were the officiating disasters that had even non-Clark fans screaming about bias. There were the awkward political moments where the league seemed to alienate portions of its own fan base. There were whispers about internal dysfunction, about coaches being unhappy, about veteran players feeling disrespected by the new media attention, focused almost exclusively on rookies. And through it all, Englebert's response has been to either stay silent or issue bland corporate statements that satisfy nobody. But this situation with Clark is different because it's forcing a conversation the league can no longer avoid. Fans are asking point blank, what exactly are you punishing her for? For caring too much? For being too competitive? For daring to suggest that maybe, just maybe, the officiating hasn't been fair? Because if that's a crime, then you're essentially telling your players to be robots, to never show emotion, to never advocate for themselves. And in a league that constantly preaches empowerment and authenticity, that's a contradiction so glaring, it's almost laughable. What's really fascinating is how this connects to everything else happening in the broader basketball world right now. Adam Silver, who oversees both the NBA and has significant influence over WNBA operations, is currently dealing with his own massive headache involving a federal gambling investigation. Congress is demanding answers about illegal betting, leaked information, and potential game manipulation. That deadline? Also October 31st. So you've got Silver trying to navigate a potential existential crisis for professional basketball, while simultaneously the WNBA is imploding over something that should have been a non-issue. The optics are absolutely terrible. And here's where Caitlin Clark's timing becomes almost poetic. By speaking out now, when the league is already vulnerable, when leadership is already under fire, when negotiations are at a critical juncture, she's essentially forced everyone's hand. The Players Association now has ammunition to demand leadership changes. Fans have a clear villain in Englebert. Media members who might have been fence-sitting are now picking sides. Clark didn't just expose the commissioner's handling of this one incident. She exposed a pattern of dysfunction that's been building for months, maybe years. The reaction from other WNBA players has been telling too. While some veterans have remained diplomatically silent, several of Clark's peers have come to her defense, not just about this specific fine, but about the larger issues she's raising. They're sharing their own stories of inconsistent discipline, of feeling like the league office plays favorites, of watching certain narratives get protected while others get thrown under the bus. What started as one player's frustration is quickly morphing into a collective reckoning about how this league is actually run. And let's talk about the fans for a second, because their response has been seismic. Within hours of the fine being announced, the hashtag supporting Clark was trending nationally, not just in sports circles. Nationally, people who don't normally care about the WNBA were suddenly weighing in, and overwhelmingly they were siding with Clark. The league's social media mentions turned into an absolute war zone of criticism directed at Englebert. Sponsors started getting tagged with questions about whether they're comfortable being associated with a league that treats its biggest star this way. This isn't just bad PR. This is a full-blown crisis of legitimacy. What makes this entire situation even more combustible is that it's happening against the backdrop of the WNBA finally getting the attention and investment it's always deserved. Attendance is up. Viewership is climbing. Media deals are being signed. The trajectory was supposed to be nothing but positive from here. But instead of capitalizing on this momentum, the league is shooting itself in the foot with unforced errors that make people question whether the leadership is even competent enough to handle success. Caitlin Clark's exposure of all this dysfunction comes at a moment when the league literally cannot afford to look incompetent. Not with collective bargaining on the line. Not with expansion teams being discussed. Not with international growth supposedly being a priority. Every misstep gets magnified, and this isn't just a misstep. This is a full stumble off a cliff, because what Clark is essentially saying, and what her statement makes abundantly clear, is that the people running the WNBA don't understand the product they're selling. They don't understand that fans connect with authenticity, with passion, with players who care enough to speak up when something feels wrong. The question now becomes, what happens next? Does Commissioner Englebert double down, potentially making the situation even worse? Does she back off, rescind the fine, and admit maybe they overreacted? Or does she just ignore it and hope it blows over, which seems to be her preferred strategy for most controversies? None of those options are particularly great because the damage is already done. Caitlin Clark has already said what needed to be said. The fans have already seen behind the curtain. The players have already started asking uncomfortable questions out loud. And here's the thing that should terrify the league office. Caitlin Clark doesn't need the WNBA nearly as much as the WNBA needs Caitlin Clark. She's got international offers. She's got endorsement deals that dwarf her playing salary. She's got a media presence that could translate into broadcasting, coaching, or entrepreneurship tomorrow if she wanted. The league, meanwhile, just watch their attendance and viewership explode specifically because she exists. If she walks away, or even if she just becomes less engaged, less passionate, less willing to be the face of the product, what exactly is the league's plan B? That's the leverage Clark is wielding right now, whether intentionally or not. By exposing how she's been treated, by highlighting the double standards and the dysfunction, she's essentially daring the league to do better. And if they can't, if they won't, then she's making it very clear she's not just going to smile and take it. This isn't the old WNBA, where players had no options and had to accept whatever scraps the league gave them. This is a new era where star power matters, where fan engagement matters, where players have actual leverage. The fallout from this is going to extend far beyond just one fine getting reversed or upheld. This is about whether the WNBA can evolve into a professionally run organization that treats its stars with the respect they deserve, or whether it's going to continue operating like some minor league where players should just be grateful for the opportunity. Caitlin Clark just forced that question into the open, and now everybody's watching to see how the league responds. Because if they get this wrong, if they alienate the one player who made the mainstream care about women's basketball, then they deserve every bit of criticism coming their way. The clock is ticking. The world is watching. And Caitlin Clark just made it very clear she's not backing down.